Boker Tov, today's Daf Yomi is Nedarim Daf Yud Zayin, Nedarim 17. And today's Torah study is sponsored anonymously by one of the members of our yeshiva in honor of all the veterans. So, in appreciation of all the veterans. So it says the Mishnah, Yesh Neder B'toch Neder. That this concept teaches us that if you make a vow while you already have another vow, the second vow is binding, and the Gemara is going to tell us what that means, and the Mishnah is going to tell us what that means. The ain shvua betoch shvua, but if you make an oath while you already have an oath, the second oath is not binding. Ketzad. So what are we referring to here? Amar. Let's say a person says, "What's a vow within a vow?" If you say Hareini Nazir, a Nazir is an example of a neder. It's called a neder because the pasuk says about a Nazir, if you're going to take a vow to become a Nazir. So therefore, the Nazir is an example of a neder. Let's say you say, Hareini Nazir im ochel. You say, I'm going to be a Nazir if I eat this loaf of bread. And then you eat that loaf of bread. And then you say, Hareini Nazir im ochel. Then you say, again, I'm going to be a Nazirite if I eat this loaf of bread. Then we're going to say that you're a Nazir each time. That you're chayiv al kol achas va'achas. So you're liable for each one. And meaning to say that you're going to serve your first 30 days as a Nazirite and then a second 30 days as a Nazirite. Let's say you say, however, Shavua shelo ochel. You take an oath that I'm not going to eat this loaf of bread. Shavua shelo ochel. Take an oath that I'm not going to eat this loaf of bread. V'achal. And then you eat the loaf of bread. Eino chayiv el achas. Under those conditions, you're only going to be liable one time. You're only liable one korban. Meaning by a shvua, the Ran says, we don't find that you're liable twice. You don't get two lashes with one eating. Because since he said shvua shlo ochel kikar zeh, since once you said, explains the Ran, once you said you take an oath that I'm not going to eat this loaf of bread, mushba v'omed, you've already sworn and you've already have an oath there. And so therefore the second oath doesn't take effect. But this is different by Naziris, because by Naziris, we're going to say that you can have two obligations. When you say your vow twice, it will take effect. So that works by a vow, but not by a shvur, but not by an oath. So the Gemara is going to offer two different approaches to how we understand that a vow can take effect upon a vow. First, the Gemara offers the approach of Rav Huna. Amar Rav Huna, lo shanu, ela da Amar hareini nazir ayom, hareini nazir ayom. So what the Gemara says, that which we say that there's a vow that's applicable upon a vow, that does not apply, that only applies in a circumstance where you say, I'll be a Nazirite today and I'll be a Nazirite tomorrow. Because we say, the migu de kamis osef yoma yasera, because you're adding on something else to the vow. So therefore, chayla nazirus al nazirus, because you're adding on something else to the vow. Therefore, the nazirus is going to take effect upon the nazirus. The Mefarish explains, the migu dis osef yoma yasera benazirus rishona, since you add on an extra day to the first nazirus, because once you said at the beginning, the kiyama hareini nazir ayom, once you say the first, I accept to be a Nazirite, Kibel olav Nazirus shloshim. You accepted upon yourself the Nazirus of 30 days. Adar Amar Hareini Nazir Machar. And then when he says, I'll be a Nazirite tomorrow, Mashma, this implies Hareini Nazir Shloshim Yom Ve'echad. And it implies I'm going to be a Nazirite for 30 days plus 1 day. But that can't be. Be'in Nazirus Yom Echad. You can't have a Nazirite for 1 day. You have to have it for at least 30. So therefore the Nazirite vow takes effect on top of the first one, and you're a Nazirite for another 30 days. So that's what Rav Huna says we're talking about, where you say, behold, I'm a Nazirite today, behold, I'm a Nazirite tomorrow. But let's say, Avo Amar, Hareini Nazir Ayom, Hareini Nazir Ayom, but if you just say, I'm a Nazirite today, and then you say again, I'm a Nazirite today, then you're not since you're not adding anything to the Nazirite vow, then that the second vow will not take effect. So that's Rav Huna's explanation. That when do we say that a neder is chal on neder? If you add something to the first neder, where Shmuel says afilu amar hareini nazar ayom, hareini nazar ayom. Shmuel says even if he says, behold, I'm a Nazarite today. Behold, I'm a Nazarite today. Chal and Nazirus allowed. Then Nazirus is still going to take effect. So that's the dispute between Rav Huna and Shmuel. So the Gemara says, well, let's first analyze who's correct by looking at our Mishnah. According to Rav Huna, who says you need to add on something or else the vow wouldn't take effect. If you just say Hareini Nazar Ayom, Hareini Nazar Ayom, it won't take effect. But it's only if we say Hareini Nazar Ayom, Hareini Nazar Machar, or if you add on something to the vow, it'll take effect. Well, if that's the case, says the Gemara, according to Rav Huna, Adatani ain't shvur b'toch shvur. Why does it say there's no oath? Why does the Mishnah say there's no such thing as an oath on top of an oath? It should have said it differently. Listening, it should have said yesh neder b'toch neder. It should have said there are some scenarios where there is a neder within a neder, and there are some scenarios where there's no neder within a neder. Let's say you say Hareini Nazar Ayom, Hareini Nazar Machar. Let's say you say the formulation, I'm a Nazarite today, I'm a Nazarite tomorrow. Then we'll say Yesh Neder B'toch Neder. Then we'll say there is a neder within a neder. But if you say Hareini Nazar Ayom, Hareini Nazar Ayom, a neder B'toch Neder, then there wouldn't be a vow within a vow. So meaning to say, they could have drawn the distinction within the case of a neder before running to a shvua. That's a typical question that the Gemara asks throughout the Shas. That if you can draw the distinction within that case, why would you go to another case? And that's the question that the Gemara asks. The Gemara asks Rav Huna, and the Gemara says kasha. Indeed, it is difficult. So that is a difficulty with Rav Huna. But since kasha doesn't represent in the Talmud a complete victory, the Gemara therefore continues to ask questions on Rav Huna. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Yesh neder b'toch neder, ve'in shua b'toch shua. So we learned in our Mishnah, there is a vow within a vow, but there's no oath upon an oath. So the Gemara says, Hey Chidami, what's the scenario that we're referring to? If the scenario is, like Rav Huna said, Hareini Nazar Ayom, Hareini Nazar Machar. If the scenario is like Rav Huna said, behold, I'm a Nazarite today, behold, I'm a Nazarite tomorrow. Tikavase gabi shvua. And what's the parallel case by an oath? Shlo ochel te'inim. He says an oath that I'm not going to eat figs. V'chazar v'amar shvua shlo ochel anavim. And then he says an oath that I'm not going to eat grapes. Well, if the parallel case by an oath is that you're adding on something just like you did by neder, then why is the oath not going to take effect? You're adding something onto it. It's basically a separate oath. So what's the scenario where we say that a neder upon a neder works, but an oath upon an oath does not work? What's the scenario where we say an oath upon an oath does not work? The following case where we say an oath upon an oath does not work. What's the case? Could go into Amar Shvua Shelo Ochel Te'in. He takes an oath that I'm not going to eat figs. And then he comes back and says an oath that I'm not going to eat figs. So basically he says an oath that I'm not going to eat figs. And then he says the same thing, an oath that I'm not going to eat figs. And what's the parallel case by Naziris? Exactly the case where I say I'm a Nazarite today, I'm a Nazarite today. And we say that it is a vow inside a vow. So this is a difficulty against Rav Huna, because we're saying that what's the only case where you say an oath within an oath does not work if it's the same oath twice. So if that doesn't work by an oath, that should work by a Nazarite. So this is a difficulty with Rav Huna. So what would Rav Huna respond? Rav Huna will respond, Mas Nisan the Amar, no. Hareini Nazir, Hayom Hareini Nazir Machar. Rav Huna says, I stick with my position that our Mishnah is referring to a case where he says, I'm a Nazarite today, I'm a Nazarite tomorrow, and that's why it's going to be binding. But what's the parallel case to an oath? The Kavase Gabe Shvua. What's the parallel case to an oath? The Amar Shalo Ochel Te'inim, the Chazar v'Amar Shvua Shalo Ochel Te'inim, where he says, where he says an oath that I will not eat figs. So the parallel case by an oath is where he says the Amar Shlo Ochel Te'inim, the Chazav Amar Shlo Ochel Te'inim V'Anavim. The first oath is that I will not eat figs, and the second oath is that I will not eat figs and grapes. There's the low highway. That's where we're going to say it's not applicable. That under those circumstances, the second oath is not binding because the only way you can violate the second oath, it's impossible to violate the second oath without him also violating the first oath. And since he already took an oath about the first thing, about the figs, and he can't violate the second oath without violating the first oath, therefore the second oath will not be binding. But by Nazirite, so even though by Nazirite, we're going to say, by Nazir, we would say it would be binding because even though the second Nazirus will not apply to the first 29 days, nevertheless, it will apply to the last day. So therefore, we're going to say by Nazirite, it would apply. So the Gemara says, but wait, is that really the case that Rav Huna says that in those circumstances, the oath doesn't apply? But we're going to bring you a teaching by Rabbah, Amar Rabbah. Let's say you took an oath that you're not going to eat figs, and then you take another oath that you're not going to eat figs and grapes. And then you ate the figs, the hifresh carbon, and you separated the carbon for the figs. And then you went ahead and you ate the grapes. So we say under those circumstances, you didn't completely violate the second oath because you only ate half a shear, because therefore you only ate half of the amount that you took an oath against, i.e. just the grapes. And you don't bring a sacrifice for the half shear, so for the half amount. But anyway, the Gemara says that what's the reason why you're not going to be liable for when you eat the grapes? It's only because you already brought a carbon for the figs. That's the reason. That's why you're not liable. But let's say you had not brought a carbon already for the figs, and you would be liable for two sacrifices, one because of the first oath, and one because of the second oath, one because of eating the figs the first time, and one because of eating the grapes and the figs the second time. So we see from here, we see from here in a scenario where we said an oath that I'm not going to eat figs, and then an oath that I'm not going to eat grapes and figs. Since we say that there's an oath on grapes, we're going to also say that the oath is on the figs. So therefore, it would be applicable under those scenarios. So this is a question raised from Rabbah against Rav Huna. The Gemara's answer is going to be, you can't raise a question on Rav Huna from Rabbah because they're both Amoraim. And so therefore, an Amora is allowed to argue with an Amora. So Gemara says, Rav Huna was Sfira Karabba. Rav Huna doesn't hold like Rabbah. And so therefore, it's not a problem. Of course, Rav Huna doesn't have to hold like Rabbah. So that's how we'll stop here. We'll pick this up, God willing, on Shabbos's daf. We'll pick up this scenario and we'll repeat it. And hold on one second. And